Israeli police raided two bookshops in Jerusalem, where they arrested the owners and confiscated books. And they were arrested on suspicion of, quote, selling books containing incitement and support for terrorism. One of them was a coloring book called From the River to the Sea. Coloring books are scary. Now,
that's invoking terrorism.
Again, with the parallels here, if y'all are at all familiar with the trigger-happy banning of books that happens throughout the United States, you'll know that a lot of these books are geared towards children. They can be about Palestine. A lot of books about Palestine have been banned from, school libraries or public libraries and things like that. Schools about LGBTQ issues, schools about, racism being a thing. This speaks to the fact that what is really scary to fascist states, whether that be Israel or the United States, is knowledge and a deep understanding of your place and your place in time. That as James Baldwin said, the history is not past. So understanding, like if you go into this East Jerusalem bookstore and you find out that this place that you're in used to be called Palestine, and this is what that means, and this is that is unacceptable, especially to the Israeli Zionist project that makes it sound like this has just always been Israel. There's just like this influx of terrorists that are here right now, but we're going to fix that. Just like if you're trying to perpetuate this myth of the white supremacist city on a hill that has just always been lovely and wonderful and make it great again, it really gums that up when you talk about the genocide of indigenous peoples, when you talk about the fact that slavery never actually ended. This does not lend itself to that cozy American exceptionalist myth. This is, again, not anything new in terms of targeting those who are writers or storytellers. Rafat al-Arir, for instance, was targeted. The Palestinian poet and historian was killed in December of 2023, targeted specifically because he was a writer and a poet and a storyteller.
And the poet who basically started the Great March of Return, I actually met him for 2 seconds in Washington, D.C. He was assassinated by Israel.
Right.
They need to kill the poets and the writers and the speakers and the academics that get people to understand what's going on.
Yeah. So I wanted to share that again to make the parallel and also to make fun of the fascists for being afraid of a coloring book.
It's always good to do that. Okay, so some updates on the West Bank as well. Electronic Intifada always doing great work, and they're being arrested for it.
Tamara Nasser is a great journalist, by the way. I interviewed her yesterday, and that will be on Project Censored's radio show next week, if you'd like to take a listen to that. This is her latest piece about the West Bank. So for those who don't know, on January 21st, Israel launched what's called Operation Iron Wall that was specifically targeted against the West Bank.
Put in hundreds of gates stopping people from being able to commute around the West Bank.
That detonated entire city blocks, sniper attacks, aerial attacks. I mean, as Israeli politicians have been very overt about, they are using Gaza-like tactics on the West Bank. And as Anarwa pointed out, they said, quote, "This is a spillover of the war in Gaza." And Tamara writes that Israel's ceasefire agreement with Hamas was met with strong opposition from the right-wing coalition of the Israeli government. And this compelled the Israeli government to frame the large-scale operation in the occupied West Bank as an extension of the war in Gaza. Haaretz pointed out that it was designed to give the far-right parties cover for remaining in the governing coalition. And since the 21st of January, the ceasefire went into effect on January 19th, nearly 50 Palestinians have been killed, over 100 have been injured. And of course, like it does all the time, Israel is doing this under the guise of crushing armed resistance, which is always BS. People have said, including the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, said that it is clear to me that Israel is not fundamentally interested in Gaza. It is fundamentally interested in the West Bank. And that's very true. I mean, when I talked to Tamara, she pointed out that ideologically, even religiously, and of course politically, the West Bank is far more important to Israel than Gaza. So they are really ramping up their violence on the West Bank as part of a long-standing targeting of the West Bank.
This was never about Hamas. Like, Hamas is not in the West Bank. There's no hostages that Hamas is holding in the West Bank. So all of those arguments about, oh, it's October 7th, it's we're doing this in Gaza because of Hamas, if they release the hostages, well, then why are you bombing the West Bank? Why are you arresting everybody in the West Bank? Why are you putting in hundreds of gates to stop people from being able to move around the West Bank without going through armed checkpoints? Yeah, armed checkpoints where they don't know if they're going to be shot for no reason. Like, all of that is being done in the West Bank that does not have Gaza, that does not have hostages. So it just proves their nonsense. This has all been part of a ethnic cleansing campaign.
The Israeli forces have basically admitted that they sweep up this many people and shove them in detention and jails and torture camps because they want to use them as pawns for later, to say, hey, you give us this and we'll give you hostages back. So just like a brief point to explain, there's something in occupied West Bank that's called an outpost. Now, all of the occupied territories in the West Bank are illegal under international law, but even according to Israeli law, these outposts are illegal. And basically what these outposts are is kind of smaller numbers of settlers that gather in a certain area with a few caravans or structures, often unconnected to water and electricity. But what the Israeli government is trying to do now is trying to fast track making these quote unquote outposts official under Israeli law. And to give you an idea, less than 7 outposts were established on average every year in the West Bank since 1996. But in 2024 alone, 59 outposts were established. That is, I'm not good at math, but that is many times the amount of 7. What we see, and this was during what was happening in Gaza, so it's important to recognize that while understandably people were paying attention to Gaza, this was also happening in the West Bank and got, zilch coverage anywhere.
Yeah.
But that this is a very serious escalation. And as ANARWA and other agencies have pointed out, this is the most violence that they've seen since the Second Intifada in 2000. So this is a serious, serious issue, and it really speaks to the push of this current government in Israel to completely ethnically cleanse and eradicate the Palestinian presence in the West Bank.